good afternoon, Rhian-Mari, and very happy that we have the possibility to meet at this anniversary conference of City UK, which we are proudly supporting. And we have a chance today to exchange views on what is probably the biggest challenge we face, and to see with the participants at this conference from the financial services and professional services sector, how we can weigh in to the rebuilding and revitalizing of the UK economy to a more sustainable model. Now, you are the CEO of the Green Finance Institute, which has been now in action for just over a year and a half, I think. And what I would love you to tell us is, well, how has the journey been so far, and where are you today?
Anne-Marie, it's always good to see you, and thank you to City UK for giving us the opportunity to have a conversation today. Yes, it's been a year and a half since I became the first Chief Executive of the Green Finance Institute. For anyone who's not familiar with the Green Finance Institute, this was one of the recommendations of the Green Finance Task Force that the government convened back in 2017, recognizing that in order to accelerate the mainstreaming of green finance, we were going to need to set up some body that would sit between the policymakers and the city, acting as that interface as we increasingly need to collaborate on the enabling policies as well as the financial innovation that is needed for us to mobilize capital towards the real economy outcomes. So it's been a real whirlwind for the last year and a half. I haven't worked this hard since I was a first-year analyst in an investment bank, but I am really enjoying it. Obviously, we're seeing such huge momentum when it comes to green finance, and I'm sure we're going to touch on that in some of the rest of our conversation, Anne-Marie. But just quickly, the way that we interpreted our mandate at the Green Finance Institute, we're an independent, commercially focused organisation that's seed funded by government and the City of London Corporation. So we have a huge amount of convening power by virtue of our funders, but sadly no balance sheet to do our own transactions. So the way that we interpreted that mandate was to very much focus on financing green as opposed to greening finance. And that may sound like semantics, but I think it's an important distinction, because greening finance, to me, primarily the purview of the regulator, looking at the need for stress tests, looking at the need for disclosure and risk and capital weights and the right governance structures within financial services. Unfortunately, in the UK, we already have a very proactive and a very pragmatic regulator through the PRA and the FCA and the Bank of England as well, looking at how we tackle that aspect of the challenge. So instead, we very much set our stall looking at financing green. How do we create the conditions for mainstream financial players to really avail of the opportunity that a transition to net zero presents? How do we get rid of some of these barriers that are actively stopping mainstream financial providers from actually generating viable revenues from, with the right risk-adjusted returns from transport, from buildings, from increasingly nature and agriculture? These are some of the key themes that we've been pursuing.
Well, it does absolutely sound like a huge agenda. And of course, the transition process that we are all facing is an incredibly big challenge, but also, I think, increasingly more seen as a once in a lifetime, certainly, opportunity to reset. And that is where the conversation this week, actually, I think, has really accelerated against the backdrop of the UK government legislating for net zero by 2050, on the way to COP26 in a year from now, and just this week, the Prime Minister having published what I would call a bold vision. We are having this conversation at an incredibly interesting moment. So considering your mission and where we are today, what does this all look like for the Green Finance Institute? What is your early reaction to the Prime Minister's ambition, and where do we now go?
Well, it really does feel like an inflection point. I think I agree. And it was only a week ago, Anne-Marie, you were speaking at our Green Horizons Summit that we were co-hosting with City of London Corporation and the World Economic Forum. We had 12 chief executives of business and finance. We had the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Governor of the Bank of England. We had Larry Fink, Mike Bloomberg, Christiana Figueres, Kristalina Georgieva. It was an absolute all-star cast. And the reason I name drop all those people is because it shows that this discussion has elevated from the working level right up into the boardroom. And really, this is a discussion. And we knew from, at the beginning of the year, and Davos now feels like a lifetime ago, but there were commitments that were being made at Davos by business, by finance leaders. And we've just seen that accelerate throughout the year. And so, some of the announcements at our Horizon Summit last week, for example, from Mark Carney, who presented his private finance strategy for COP26. Obviously, he's leading that work on behalf of the UK government and the UNFCCC. He has this overriding objective to ensure that every professional financial decision takes climate change into account. And that obviously requires the right framework so that the financial sector can reallocate capital to realize the opportunities presented by the transition to net zero, whilst mitigating the considerable physical transition regulatory risk that's posed by the changing climate. And Mark Carney set out his vision through a 4-pillar approach: reporting, so improving the quality, quantity, and comparability of climate-related disclosures by implementing the TCFD framework; risk management, providing better tools and guidance for the financial sector on that; returns, helping investors identify the opportunities in the transition; and mobilization, so increasing private financial flows to emerging and developing economies, and importantly, connecting available capital with investable projects, very much after our own strategy here at the GFI. And those objectives were then bolstered last week by announcements, as you mentioned, from the Chancellor and the Government of Bank of England during their respective speeches, where obviously the Chancellor confirming that the UK will mandate large companies and financial services to report their impact on the climate by 2025. So first major G7 economy to make the TCFD mandatory. And he also made an important statement about onshoring aspects of the EU taxonomy that defines what is and what isn't green, and then setting up a UK technical expert group to evolve those definitions. And that taxonomy point is really important for developing green finance investment opportunities and innovation in green finance. But its significance was overlooked a little bit because he also announced that the UK will issue its inaugural green sovereign bond, so a green gilt, obviously subject to market conditions next year. But that's an outcome that we've all been working very hard for, including us at the Green Finance Institute. And so because the sterling issuance of green bonds comprises only 3% of the green bond market, and there's a huge opportunity for us to really kickstart that domestic market, as we saw when Ireland and Belgium first brought their sovereign green bonds to market. So, a real business case there for financial services. And then finally, not to be outdone, Andrew Bailey, Governor of the Bank of England, he confirmed the new launch date of June 2021 for a climate stress exercise, which has obviously been delayed due to COVID. And yet, despite all those exciting announcements, they all seem to be a little bit last week's news now, given that Boris Johnson brought out the government's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution just yesterday. And there's a lot that I could say about that. I mean, it's a serious set of commitments from the Prime Minister, which, if successfully delivered, is really going to move the needle on UK emissions over the coming decades. But I'll confine myself to 3 points. So the first is, I think the Prime Minister's statement has really reframed the discussion on green investment. Green was previously seen unhelpfully as equating to cost. And I think that's now being repositioned as equaling jobs, industrial renewal, and the route to leveling up and economic recovery. And that is really significant because there hasn't been, and there isn't, an intellectually coherent, scientifically supported high carbon route to growth. There wasn't one before COVID, there won't be one after COVID. So the pathways to net zero need to be recognized as the pathways to economic recovery and prosperity. And I do think that message came out very clearly in the Prime Minister's vision. And we now also have a meaningful strategic political direction on transport, on power, on hydrogen, on heat, on carbon capture storage, on woodland creation. You know, these are not piecemeal announcements. This is a vision that has real breadth, and it really recognizes and hopefully really drives home the message that this is a systemic and profound transformation for our whole economy that we need to undergo. And then finally, I think this is a vision. I think it's right. It's a vision statement as opposed to a detailed plan. And I think it's now important for business and finance to play our part in helping create the investable policy roadmaps that will underpin this bold vision. So we need to be playing our part in informing that. And obviously over the next coming months, we've got now pretty high hopes for the spending review, for the energy white paper, for the transport decarbonisation paper, and so it goes on. And I was very fortunate. I had the opportunity to discuss the plan at the Prime Minister's roundtable yesterday afternoon, and I took the opportunity to raise 2 points during that discussion. One of them was, wherever we can, we need to try and deploy government balance sheet as guarantees, not as grants. So guarantee mechanisms that will create investable asset classes and opportunity for the increasing pools of ESG aligned investment to play its part from the private capital and investment. And secondly, and I'm starting to sound like a stuck record on this one, but there is really a strong case for a new public finance institution in the UK, a new investment bank with a mandate as a risk mitigation vehicle to support the 10-point plan vision, catalyze private investment in these newer technologies through ensuring that the risk-adjusted returns work for private capital. And just final word on this, we have an amazing blueprint in the UK. The success of the previous Green Investment Bank in setting up the offshore wind industry. 40% of installed capacity of offshore wind worldwide sits around the British coastline. It is expected to provide a third of our electricity by 2030 and support 27,000 jobs. And that was before yesterday's increased ambition and investment from the government. And the Green Investment Bank played its role in de-risking some of that early stage project and construction risk, enabling, and obviously the government played a huge role in providing contracts for differences, so a guarantee mechanism effectively on the cost of electricity from offshore wind and signalling a long-term commitment to that particular technology. And these combined with some other policy and regulatory moves meant that we now have a successful industry in the UK, employing thousands, helping our emissions, and importantly now fully financed by institutional investment. It's a fantastic blueprint. It's one we need to, or green print, and it's one that we need to replicate when we look at some of these other exciting nascent technologies, burgeoning technologies like hydrogen, like carbon capture storage, and I could go on. I'll leave it there.
So I think what we can all see is that indeed we have now a good framework in place. We have many tools. We have a very proactive Bank of England looking at risk management, and we have regulators who absolutely join us in seeing what can be done. So I believe that now it's a matter of accelerating what we can do on so many tracks. And then we will need to pull it together so that we can indeed progress as fast as we can. So you have mentioned a few things which I would like to look at a little more closely. You mentioned the transportation sector, and that was the session that you moderated at last week's Green Summit. Why did you take that sector? What more can you tell us about what you took away from what was a pretty powerful panel?
Well, thank you. There were two panels that I moderated last week. One was around the built environment, so looking at the energy efficiency of buildings and heating, and the other one was on transport. And the reason for those two is those are two key projects for the Green Finance Institute. The energy efficiency of building is our Pathfinder project, our big flagship, the one that we launched at the COP in Madrid last year. So we're coming up to our 1-year anniversary. And that has been really testing, bringing the market together, testing our theory of change, which is by bringing all the aspects of the value chain together, not just the finance, but the developers, the estate agents, the surveyors, architects, the whole thing, regulators, policymakers, local authorities, and I'm probably missing a whole, academics. I'm missing a whole bunch of other people. By bringing them together and actually genuinely having a candid discussion about what the barriers are to effective, cost-effective, competitive finance in that space, we've been able to work with what are now over 200 members of that coalition to actually start designing some of the solutions that will overcome those barriers. And I can come back to some of those. And the success of that project, which has also seen us expand into zero carbon heating, setting up a task force on that too, has also attracted interest from others across the industry and across government, asking us to replicate that methodology looking at transport. And so we are, and here's some breaking news, before the end of the year, we are launching our new Decarbonisation of Road Transport Coalition. We've made a fantastic hire. Thank you to Lloyds Bank for letting us have your head of electrification of transport, Lauren Pammer. Hopefully Lloyds will forgive us at some point. So Lauren is joining us to run that program. And it's looking at, and as you say, we had this session last week, which was really me note-taking, because this is such a huge opportunity for investment. And obviously now we have the big announcement from government yesterday that internal combustion engine vehicles are going to be phased out. New ones are going to be phased out from 2030. So the whole industry is now poised, and we now need to make sure that finance is playing its part. And Morgan Stanley, if you forgive my quoting them, came out with a report earlier this summer that said, that we're going to need to, they expect to see electric vehicles jump to 113 million globally by 2030, 924 million of them on the road by 2050. And that, that's a rise from 1.3 million year before last. And so to fully build out the required global infrastructure to support that kind of disruptive change, it's not just about financing the OEMs. It's about financing the gigafactories, the battery components, the electricity capacity and storage, and all the other infrastructures. And that could require supporting infrastructure, and that could require over $11 trillion of capital investment over coming decades. And why that's exciting, if you look at that as a financier, I've spent 20 years in finance as a banker doing transactions and deals. So just looking at a huge blob of money like that as a monolithic blob doesn't help us get us where we need to go. What we actually need to do is to break down all those challenges and make sure that we are engaging with the right spectrum, right actors across the spectrum of financial, of the financial industry, to make sure that we are looking at the people who have the right risk reward appetite for each of those bits of that value chain, exactly as we've done with the energy efficiency of buildings, where the solutions for providing a better guarantee mechanism to crowd in financing into social housing retrofitting is a very different conversation with different financial expertise to talking to somebody about a green equity release product or a green mortgage for the able to pay owner-occupier sector. And so we intend to do something very similar in the transport space. And we're really looking forward to building that coalition, and our work will start in earnest in January.
What I hear is that a number of things are truly accelerating, and that is incredibly good news. BNP Paribas and I'm delighted to see now that when we speak about the need for innovation, that clearly things have to accelerate. And the other word you used is coalition. Collaboration, we believe, is absolutely key in progressing and in a way in connecting the expertise that is now growing, multidisciplinary in industry, science, the tech. We are engaging with, for example, TechNation to really understand better how we can accelerate our own solutions when we look at sustainability-linked loans, as we led one recently for Tesco, with actually science-based targets embedded as an incentive for Tesco to cut greenhouse gas emissions. So we have a lot to learn. It makes it incredibly exciting. And I think it is now a moment where our employees truly can see that they bring their own personal values and convictions to their job. And it has really accelerated the dialogue with clients. Nevertheless, the scaling up of all of this is, I think, a big challenge. And the financial sector, you make reference to lending. I think banks are now moving. We at BNP Paribas have absolutely worked on aligning our sector lending policies with the Paris objectives, engaging and supporting clients who have a genuine transition strategy. Nevertheless, I think we need to see more to scale it up. The good news on the investment side is that through the ESG filter, and I think citizens at large wanting to have more impact on how they direct their purchasing and their savings, this is all very good news. How do we ensure that we don't lose momentum? And perhaps I then come to two questions that I would love to ask you. Given that we are on the path to Glasgow, COP26, and that we have today a big group of financial professionals who all hold levers to accelerate the transition, what do we need to focus on most?
I think well, let me start by saying I 100% agree with the fact that this is a very exciting time for finance to be thinking about the solutions to net zero. There's a huge scope for innovation, and congratulations to BNP Paribas, who has been at the vanguard of a number of very, very innovative and pioneering solutions that we've seen. In the year to come, and this is an opportunity for all of us in financial services in the year to come. We've got an opportunity to showcase what it is we're doing, to showcase our ambition. COP26 hopefully will be an in-person event that will be the largest gathering of world leaders on UK soil ever. And it's a real opportunity for the UK to show leadership, and for UK-based financial institutions to, by extension, to also show leadership on this. I think if there's one call to action, just one, I would like to echo what Minister Alex Sharma asked for last week, which was for everybody to join the race to zero, to set a net zero target for their organizations. And I know a number of financial institutions have already done this or are in the process of doing this. The one thing I would say is, please can we make sure that, you know, we're not setting such long arbitrary targets that we don't set the staging posts and the milestones that mean that we're already starting to pivot now. The idea of, you know, trying to pivot late and last, just don't think that that's going to be a sound strategy, given, you know, this stuff, the momentum is not going away, Anne-Marie, because the momentum behind this agenda is based on science. And sadly, the physics that, the laws of physics are immutable, and the laws of climate change, they're governed by those physical parameters. So we are going to see, sadly, more extreme and more extreme weather events that are going to be more severe and more frequent. We're going to see an electorate and a consumer base that are going to be demanding more action from our policymakers. If we look at this from, you know, the risk perspective, I know I've spoken a lot about opportunity because that's really what I'm passionate about. But if we look at this from a risk perspective, regulatory risk is one of the biggest risks that I think financial services face on this agenda, as well as the transition and the physical risk. I mean, there are 400 pieces of regulation already in play to do with climate and finance. That's double the number that were here 5 years ago, and it's continuing to accelerate. And I don't see that that's going to go away. That's going to continue. So, you know, one of the challenges for us working in financial services, and you touched on this, is to be able to horizon scan. It's to be able to understand what are the technological changes happening in the sectors that we serve. What is the political and regulatory landscape and how that is changing, both in the sectors that we serve and in the financial sector itself. But as you point out, the thing that gives me real optimism about this is that we have the solutions, the ingenuity and the creativity within financial services to solve this. And quite often, some of those solutions are sitting with some of the younger, more junior members of these large financial organizations. And part of the challenge is to create the environment that nurtures their innovation, that empowers them and enables them to have their say in how we're going to pivot our businesses.
I don't think, Rhian-Mari, that I have in my career seen the sort of confluence of things that are now happening. And I agree with you that most of all, it is about the opportunity and the obligation indeed to make a good job of the rebuilding and the revitalizing. And indeed, I believe that everyone now is more conscious of it and absolutely wants to prepare a better world for the generations to come. So I guess in summary, it is really accelerating what is working well and making sure that we cover those gaps that are not covered today, and really energizing the possibility for new jobs that should be created indeed in this space. And what we haven't really touched on so much yet, but it is there and you have mentioned it, is of course that the UK remains a fantastic market for innovation, and hopefully for the clean technology that will really make a difference, so that we can keep on exploring and embedding in what the financial sector and the professional services can bring in acceleration of this program. Dr. Rhian-Mari Thomas, thank you very much. I look forward to continuing this dialogue and working with the Green Finance Institute as we go on this accelerated journey.
Thank you very much, Rhian-Mari.